We know that confirmation hearings typically involve nominees receiving accolades and kudos about their fitness for the position to which they have been appointed. And while rather routine, it is nonetheless a process by which the legislature gathers information on whether to approve or reject candidates that are nominated or appointed by the governor. Having previously served as the executive director for the Guam Airport, I'm familiar with the great responsibility that each member of the board must bear when exercising all powers vested in the authority. However, I also understand that to be considered fit enough to govern the authority, this great responsibility must also be accompanied by equally great character. In this case, I refer to character in terms of the moral qualities distinctive to an individual. In 2012, while employed as the general manager of the Port Authority, the nominee before us served as the chairman of the Port's board of directors. So I had many occasions to interact with Mr. Tydinko in a professional capacity. Unfortunately, Madam Chair, these interactions forced me to emphatically oppose Mr. Tydinko's appointment. I further call into question his integrity and ability to justly serve on a board as critical to our island as that of GIAA's. Madam Chair, I have nothing to lose or gain by Mr. Tydinko's confirmation. I simply believe that to sit here in silence would not only neglect my duties as a member of this committee, but would act as a great disservice to our people, whom I believe deserve to be reminded of his conduct in his role as the Port's board chairman. And I can speak to specific actions which I believe led to many unresolved liabilities and credibility issues that plague the Port to this day. Mr. Tydinko permitted unprofessional and irregular legal billing practices for the sake of his personal relationship with the Port's legal counsel. Under his chair, the Port's legal counsel was allowed to delay the submission of bills for legal services for many months at a time, sometimes more than 9 months after services were first rendered. If you think that with an average monthly billings of more than $60,000, this meant that more than $500,000 in legal fees were incurred before bills were even submitted for a review and approval. The outstanding fees that were already incurred but not billed were also not disclosed in management audit letters when I was there. This is significant because it becomes less likely for management to determine the accuracy of charges or manage the efficient expenditure of public funds when bills are submitted untimely. And despite being informed on more than one occasion about this irregularity, Mr. Tydinko repeatedly allowed it to happen anyways and did little to require legal counsel to be timely with bill submissions. Indeed, Mr. Tydinko appeared complicit when on one occasion he directed the immediate payment of invoices to cover legal counsel's payroll and MC obligations. This mandate provided little opportunity for appropriate review and scrutiny of the legal bills. From what I observed, many of these bills did not fairly reflect the basis on which the attorney's charges had been determined. One example is an invoice number 11618 that billed more than 24 hours in a single day for one attorney. By the time I exposed it, and I wasn't employed at the time, forcing the Port's legal counsel to correct the invoice, the bill had already been certified and paid in full by the Port. Mr. Tydinko's failure to address and carefully manage the Port's legal fees speaks volumes about his unsuitability to be a board member of GIAA. And we are well aware that the airport has its share of challenges today. While this negligence is enough reason for concern, it has also been documented that while at the Port, Mr. Tydinko blatantly disregarded Guam law by conducting board meetings in private in clear violation of Guam's open government law. For example, and it was referenced several times today, in an email transmission dated October 18, 2012 to other board members, Mr. Tydinko called for a meeting at legal counsel's office indicating, and I quote, A need for us to meet tomorrow, unquote. In response, one board member inquired, quote, do we need a priest, referee, fireman, videographer? Mr. Didinko replied, how about a gravedigger? Long before any report or investigation had been completed about a work injury claim, this email so succinctly captures the flippancy and cruelty in Mr. Didinko's desire to bury political foes and other longtime members of the Ports family. You have heard today, and you have seen some sitting in the audience, and I cannot begin to express the ruin of the lives that resulted from Mr. Didinko's chairmanship. All the while, he would have everyone believe that he did Guam a favor, that he cleaned house and uncovered a criminal conspiracy to defraud the government by the Port 7. Just step back for a moment and think about this supposed grandiose scheme he uncovered. He would have you believe that 7 unrelated employees, many who were recently recognized for their outstanding service to the port, would risk their livelihoods and unblemished careers to permit one employee to have spine surgery for an incident that no one disputes occurred, with the majority of funds earmarked to pay for a surgeon and off-island hospital expenses? What would these employees gain by engaging in this grand conspiracy? How absurd a plot, even for a cheap detective novel. The fact that Mr. Didinko bought into the conspiracy, or perhaps promised someone he would develop a conspiracy, and decided before the investigation even commenced that a gravedigger was necessary, demonstrates a complete lack of open-mindedness and transparency needed to serve as a GIAA board member. Madam Chair, I do not condone the immoral actions Mr. Didinko has subjected myself and others at the port who were unfortunate enough to find themselves under his corrupted power. He may be wonderful to those he considers his peers or his equals, but to those outside his circle of desirables or political alliances, he can be arrogant, callous, and dismissive. It's as plain as black and white. The meeting minutes of December 19, 2012, wherein my termination was discussed, was interspersed with, quote, wait a minute, Merry Christmas, seconded with Merry Christmas, exclamation point, and further spiced with 5 separate notations of, in brackets, laughing. How festive. Better yet, please read the board minutes of October 12, 2012, executive session, for a more vivid discourse of his abusive character. I want to end on this point, Madam Chair. If upstanding moral character, integrity, and transparency are virtues that our governor prioritizes for her administration to exemplify, then Mr. Didinko is the wrong man for this critical agency board, especially if he is pegged to be its chair. His confirmation as a member to the airport's board would be a great disservice to the people of Guam. As a member of this committee, I firmly stand against this appointment. I urge my fellow colleagues, and I encourage you, read into the details and do the same. Sa parahamzudos ni gaibhaupagu, fanongi na timamagusidzuus, sa magahirenno. So I want to thank you for allowing me to make these statements. I do not necessarily have any questions for the nominee, but I believe that everything that I have stated is on the record, and I would be very happy to share that with you, Madam Chair, and the committee. Siduos Maasi.